Okay, so get this right. There are these birds that build these really, really elaborate structures, like seriously elaborate. But, and here's the kicker, they don't build them for shelter. They build them to, well, to attract a mate.
Yeah.
It's like they're putting on this huge art exhibit, but it's all for like seduction.
Wow, that's wild.
And that's just a taste of what we're going to dive into today. How smart birds really are, especially when it comes to finding a partner.
It's really fascinating, I think, how it challenges our ideas of what being quote-unquote smart really means in the animal kingdom. Like we think of intelligence as problem solving, tool use, that kind of thing. But these birds are showing us that intelligence can also be about these complex mating displays.
Exactly. And to help us unpack all of this, we're going to be using excerpts from this book, Bowerbirds, Budgies, and Birds, Mating Strategies and Cognitive Choice. So it's going to be a pretty wild ride, from the Bowerbirds with their incredible visual displays to the Budgies who, well, let's just say they're a lot brainier than they look. So buckle up, because we're about to uncover some truly mind-blowing bird behavior. Like, you won't believe it.
Yeah, let's start with the bowerbirds. Have you heard of the spotted bowerbird?
A little bit. Yeah.
Well, these guys, they're like the master architects of the bird world.
Yeah.
Even though they have these like kind of dull brown feathers.
Yeah. But they build these incredible bowers, right?
Yes, exactly.
To attract females. But here's the thing. They're not nests. They're more like elaborate stages for like an avian talent show.
It's amazing. They put so much effort into it. It's unbelievable. Like there's this one bower that Alec Chisholm, this ornithologist, he documented. It had over 1,300 bones in it. Like, can you imagine collecting all those bones, not for any practical reason, just to impress a mate? That's crazy.
That's wild.
It says something, doesn't it? About intentionality, aesthetics,
Yeah,
Pretty remarkable for a bird, don't you think?
definitely. It makes you wonder, like, what's going on in those little bird brains? Are they just, like, following instinct? Or is there something more, some deeper cognitive process at play,
That's the question, isn't it? And to answer that, I think we need to look beyond just the bower itself, beyond the construction, and really get into the performance that happens there.
Oh, yeah, because it's not just about building a pretty structure, right? Like, the male spotted bowerbirds, they put on a whole show for the females. We're talking intricate dance moves, crest flaring, even using objects to, like, create specific visual effects.
Because the whole theatrical production is so carefully choreographed. They even do vocal mimicry,
Yeah.
imitating other birds, animals.
Really?
Yeah. Even sounds like thunder. They're incredible at creating this whole sensory experience.
Wow, that's impressive. But hold on, the females are watching all of this from a distance, right? Like, what are they actually looking for in this performance? Is it just, like, who's the loudest or the most energetic?
Well, remember, the female's going to choose her mate based on this whole display. The bower, the performance, the whole thing, it all matters.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets interesting, because researchers think that the females might actually be evaluating something more than just aesthetics.
Like what?
Like the male's cognitive abilities, his intelligence.
So it's not just a beauty contest, it's a brain game.
Exactly. Think about it. To create these displays, the males need to really understand their environment. They need to problem solve. They need to figure out what appeals to the females. It takes a pretty sophisticated mind.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection. But how do researchers actually measure this? Like, we can't exactly give these birds an IQ test.
Of course not. But there are clues in their behavior. Take the spotted bowerbird, for example. The way they arrange decorations in their bower suggests an understanding of, get this, perception.
Like an avian illusionist. But how do they actually do that?
Well, it's like they're creating these scenes, right? So as the female approaches the bower, you have these bigger items, like those bones we talked about.
Right.
They act as these long-distance signals, like a billboard, Then as she gets closer, enters the bower, the focus shifts to these smaller, more intricate treasures.
Oh, so it's like creating a visual journey for the female.
Exactly. They're guiding her experience, controlling what she sees when she sees it. And that takes a lot of smarts, spatial awareness, visual perception, even psychology.
Wow, that's wild. It's crazy to think how much strategic thinking is involved in all of this. But are all bowerbirds masters of illusion? Do they all create these really elaborate visual displays?
Well, there's actually a lot of variation between species. Like some focus more on grandeur, others on specific colors or textures. Like the satin bowerbirds, they have the thing for the color blue. Anything blue they can find, it goes in the bower.
It's like they have their own like interior design styles.
Totally.
But I've heard that the great bowerbird, they kind of take the cake when it comes to visual trickery. Like they create an actual optical illusion. Right?
Yeah, they're the masters of forced perspective. So they arrange these stones in a specific pattern in front of the bower, and it creates this illusion that makes them and their decorations look way bigger to the female.
So
it's similar to what like Renaissance painters used to do to create depth and scale.
wow. Bird brains using techniques that like humans have been studying for centuries. Pretty amazing. But how do they learn all of this? Is it just innate, or is there like a learning process involved?
Great question. It brings us to the idea of cultural transmission in birds. Because it turns out young bowerbirds, they don't just magically know how to build these bowers or perform these displays. They have to learn it all from the more experienced older birds.
So it's like an apprenticeship.
Exactly.
For like aspiring bowerbird Casanovas.
Right, and that really speaks to their cognitive flexibility. They're not just following a set of instructions. They're observing, imitating, and even innovating,
So there's way more going on than we realize with these like seemingly simple bird behaviors. But wait a minute, if young males are learning from the older birds, does that mean there are regional differences in how they build their bowers and perform? Like, do bowerbirds in one area have a different style than those in another area?
You are so right. That's exactly what researchers like Joe Madden have found. There are these like regional variations in how they design and decorate their bowers. And that really suggests that these are traditions, learned and passed down like cultural traditions in humans.
That's incredible. So they're not just builders and performers, they're cultural creatures with their own traditions. But all this effort, all this artistry, it must be exhausting for the males, So here's the big question. Does all this hard work actually pay off? It's kind of mind-blowing, Like all this effort, building those bowers, the performances, those illusions, cultural variations. It's like, shouldn't the females just be like throwing themselves at these guys?
You'd think so, right? I mean, it's incredible what they do, but as it turns out, female bowerbirds, super picky.
Really?
Yeah. Like, despite all that the males do, only a tiny percentage of those displays, they actually end up mating.
So what is it that the females are looking for then? Is it just like, I don't know, is it the biggest bower or having the most like blue stuff?
Well, researchers have found a few things that seem to matter.
Yeah.
Like good construction, how symmetrical the bower is, number and types of decorations, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But some scientists think it's more than that, like something deeper.
Okay, so what could be more important than having the most like flashy bower in the whole place?
Well, there's this researcher, Borgia. He suggests that what females are really looking at is the male's whole strategy. Like not just what he did, but why he did it.
So it's not just about like a beautiful bower. It's about like having a smart plan. Like why'd he choose that spot? How'd he pick the decorations and arrange them? Did he have good problem-solving skills to get it all done?
That's it. It's like the female saying, look, show me you can think strategically, show me you can adapt, be resourceful, and maybe, just maybe, I'll be impressed.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. It's kind of like with us, Like we might be attracted to someone's looks at first, but it's really their intelligence and personality that makes us want to stick around. But how do they actually test that? Like, how do researchers know that females are judging, like, intelligence and not just something else that goes along with it?
It's tough, yeah, but there are ways to study how animals think, And one of the coolest examples, it comes from a completely different bird, a budgie, a parakeet.
Budgies. Oh, I had one growing up. His name was Gray. He was so clever.
Really?
Yeah. Always figuring out how to escape his cage, stealing food right off my plate when I wasn't looking.
That's awesome. And it just goes to show you, even these like seemingly simple birds, they can be super smart. And it turns out that smarts, it might be a big deal in their mating rituals too.
Wait, seriously? Like there's more to these little green and yellow guys than meets the eye?
Absolutely. There was this study by Jiani Chen and her team at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. They wanted to see if female budgies actually prefer males who are good at, get this, problem solving.
Okay, how do you test a budgie's problem solving skills? Like, do you give them tiny Sudoku puzzles?
Haha, not quite. They made this special puzzle box with food inside, like seeds, and the males had to figure out how to open it. And the females, they were watching, seeing who could get to the food and who couldn't.
So it's like a test of their ingenuity. Like, did they have to pull levers, slide doors, go through a tiny maze?
It was a mix of stuff, yeah. Like some had to peck buttons in a certain order, others had to lift lids or fiddle with latches. They changed it up, made some harder, just to see how they'd do.
That's cool. So what happened? Did the females actually go for the, like, brainy guys?
They totally did. The females were more likely to choose the males who had opened the box, even if they hadn't, been that interested in them before, based on how they looked or whatever.
Wow, that's amazing. So smart is sexy applies to the bird world, too, huh? But why would a female care so much about how smart her mate is? Like, what advantage does that give?
That's the big question. And it goes back to Darwin, his idea that when females choose their mates, it can actually drive evolution, make the whole species smarter over time.
So if females always go for the problem solvers, those genes for intelligence, they get passed down and the next generation's a little bit smarter. It's like natural selection for brains. But, I mean, how do we know for sure? Like, what if the females were choosing based on something else that just happens to, come along with being good at problem solving?
Right. That's always the challenge, isn't it? So they have to control for other stuff. Like in that Budgie study, they made sure all the males looked pretty similar. They were all healthy and all that. They even looked at things like age and experience just to be sure the females were really picking based on how well they solved those puzzles.
So they made it fair, basically. So smarts was the only thing that really mattered. That's pretty clever. But hold on, how did they actually measure what the females wanted? Like, did they give them tiny questionnaires to fill out?
I wish it were that easy. They watched their behavior, did a series of tests, like maybe give a female the choice to hang out near the male who solved the puzzle or the one who didn't, or see which male she chooses to sit next to, or preen. Little things like that can tell you a lot about what a bird's thinking.
It's amazing what we can learn from, like, watching animals if you know what to look for. But all this talk about birds choosing for intelligence, it makes you wonder, like, what about us humans? Are we drawn to intelligence for the same reasons?
Now that is a question, isn't it? Anthropologists, evolutionary psychologists, they've been debating that for ages. I mean, we can't just take what we learn about birds and apply it directly to people, but it definitely makes you think.
Right. Like, is there some deep down evolutionary reason why we find smart people attractive? Maybe it means they have good genes or can provide for their kids. I don't know. Or maybe intelligent people are just more interesting to be around. Who knows?
Probably all of that, really. But one thing's for sure. The more we learn about how animals behave, the more we see that intelligence. It comes in all shapes and sizes, It's not just one thing.
Absolutely. I mean, from those bowerbirds with their amazing illusions to those problem-solving budgies, these birds are really making us rethink what we thought we knew about how smart animals can be. And it makes me wonder what other hidden talents are out there just waiting for us to discover them. It really is amazing when you think about it, how many different kinds of intelligence there are in the animal kingdom. We've seen how those bowerbirds, they use their creativity and understanding of perception to, create those amazing displays. And then the budgies, how they use their problem-solving skills to impress the females. It just makes you appreciate how powerful evolution is, to shape those kinds of behaviors.
And it also shows us that we still have so much to learn about how animals think.
Yeah.
I think we often underestimate creatures that are really different from us, But like we talked about today, even birds can be incredibly smart, in ways that even rival us humans sometimes.
It's pretty humbling, isn't it, to think that we humans, with our, big brains and technology and all that, we might not be as special as we thought.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the more we study animals, the more we realize that intelligence, it's not just one thing, It comes in so many forms. It's shaped by, all the challenges and opportunities in an animal's environment.
So as we're wrapping up our deep dive into the world of, bird intelligence, what's the main thing you hope our listeners will take away from all this?
I'd say the biggest thing is that we got to think bigger when it comes to what we call intelligence. We can't just use human standards to judge other animals. There's so many different ways to be smart, ways we're just starting to understand.
It's like that saying, right? Everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid.
Exactly. We need to appreciate all the different kinds of intelligence out there and recognize that each animal has its own special cognitive strength.
So the next time we see a bird, like building its nest or singing a song or just hopping around, let's, take a minute to think about how complex their behavior is and how much intelligence goes into it.
Yeah, and let's keep our eyes open for signs of intelligence in, unexpected places. We might be surprised by what we find.
And that's it for our deep dive, everyone. We hope you enjoyed learning about the world of avian architects and brainy budgies with us. Until next time, keep your minds open, stay curious, and never stop wondering about the amazing world